I've always been into paranormal stuff, ghosts and whatnot. This took place on the week of Halloween in 2014. I remember being on a group call when we were discussing paranormal and creepy stuff, and this guy brought the Ouija board into the topic. Somehow, someone dared me to set up a Ouija board and do it live with them. At first, I wasn't really willing to do it because I'm easily spooked, and I was all alone at home. But peer pressure kinda took me over, and that's when I agreed to do it. So we read all the do's and don'ts, and I set up the board. I light some candles, I turn on my camera so they can see what's going on, and I turn off the lights. It was pitch black in my room, and I could already feel that what I was doing was a mistake. Anyways, I start the seance, and mind you, I was very tired because it was very late at night, and that's something that isn't really advised whenever using a Ouija board. I asked simple questions to begin with, but nothing happened. The planchette started to move so naturally that I freaked out, and so did everyone else in the call. The planchette first went to the P, and then the A, and ended on Z. It then stopped and made its way to the top right corner, then to the top left corner, then the bottom left corner, and finally, the bottom right corner. According to what we read prior to the session, whenever the planchette does that, it means the spirit is evil, and actually is trying to escape. That's where I decided to stop the seance, cause at this point, I was really freaking out, and so were my friends. I managed to end it, but right after that, I was frozen. I couldn't move, and I was focused on this white, orb, glowy thing in front of me. I still couldn't move. I could feel that I was bawling my eyes out, but I still couldn't move. I could hear my friends yelling at me, asking if I was okay, but they never received an answer from me. And after a few minutes, the glowy orb disappeared, and I regained consciousness and let my friends know that I was fine. When we talk about what happened, and someone tried to search for the name Paz, it turns out that the name of the demon, or entity, was called Pazuzu. At least, that's what we gathered from it. After that, I ended the call and just tried to get some rest and recover from what had just happened. The next day, my friend told me that her psychic medium friend came to visit her, and the first thing she mentioned was the seance we did the night before, without my friend telling her anything about it. She said it was indeed a good call to end the seance, and that the spirit was trying to get out and was no good. Now, I'm in October of 2015. It's the week of Halloween where we played with the board. At this point, I no longer speak to my friends because life happens. Anyway, throughout this whole week, I could feel something around me. Stuff would fall down without me touching it, and a lot of other stuff like that. I'm usually able to tell whenever a spirit or something paranormal is around me, but this time, I didn't feel right or good. I kinda assumed it was connected to what had happened the year before, so I decided to contact one of the girls who was with me that night, and she did tell me that she felt the same way and the same stuff was happening to her as well. Anyways, it's all over now, hopefully, but it really was and is one of the scariest encounters with the paranormal, and I won't advise anyone to mess around with the Ouija board. So this is a little weird and happened to me a few years ago, and I've never seen it happen again. But what I'm saying is 100% true. One night, as I was sleeping, I heard someone walk into my room, and being that I'm a light sleeper, I opened my eyes right away to see what looked like my dad standing in the closet doorway. All I saw was a shadow of him though, But I didn't think much of it because it was dark out and my mom was doing laundry, so I thought he was just messing with her like he always does. So my mom walks in to give me laundry, and I tell her, "Hey, Dad's in the closet trying to scare you." And she gave me this worried look and looked in the closet, and then she said, "Nobody's in there." And the utter of those mere words creeped me out to the point where I needed a light on that whole night. It wasn't until I convinced myself that it was just a dream, and I didn't tell my parents and still haven't, but that's not where it ends. A few days later, I saw what looked like my brother go into the bathroom, but I only saw a shadow move, then close the door. Nothing too weird, right? It wasn't until I got downstairs and saw my brother sitting at the table eating breakfast. I didn't believe it and went back up to go check, but when I got into the bathroom, there was nobody in there, even though I clearly saw the person and the door close. I honestly thought I was going crazy. I ended up looking it up, and it turns out that I'm not the only one with these kinds of experiences, and it targets random people. After that, I haven't seen anything creepy happen in my house. Just at night, I swear I hear faint music, but no shadow people, so I guess that's better. Okay, so here it goes. One day back in 2007, me and my family bought a used house that was recently used by an old lady. When we moved in the house, it was pretty nice inside, except one part of the house, the living room. In the living room, on the ceiling was a little hole, almost like a bullet hole. I didn't think much of it and just ignored it. That is until the night of November 25th of 2007. I was sitting in my room, playing video games with the lights turned off. In my room, I had a table, and on top of that table was some crowns because I was coloring earlier that day. Anyway, I paused my game to take a break when I looked at the table and realized the crowns were flying off the table at lightning speed. It scared the living shit out of me, and also, let me remind you, I had no windows in my room, so the wind didn't do this. The next day, I did some research on my house, and it turns out that a man used to live in our house and had committed suicide in our living room by taking a pistol out and shooting himself in the head. That explained the hole in the ceiling. I told my mom and dad about it, and they freaked the fuck out. And in 2008, we moved out of that house, but knowing that I had no window in my room, and knowing that there was no wind to move those crowns around, still scares the shit out of me to this day. I almost died a few weeks ago. I was at a college freshman orientation camping trip at a state park 5 hours from my home. We spent 4 days learning school traditions, singing at campfires, going on hikes, and canoeing. You know, camp stuff. On the day before we went back to campus, at around 10 o'clock at night, we were ordered by the park managers to enter a small hut in the middle of the campground. I thought this was weird since curfew was at 10 and we had to be in our cabins by then, but nevertheless, I did what they said. My cabin mates and I left the cabin and walked as directed towards the hut. The moon was full, illuminating the nearby lake and giving the trees a silver sheen. It was unusually cold that day, but I didn't want to go back to get my sweater for fear of missing something important. I now wish that I had missed the whole thing. We all huddled into the room. The space was tight and there were no windows or furnishings of any kind. The walls were all white and the only way out was the door we came in from, which was now locked. Then, one of the park managers took out a foldable white wall and cut the room in half, forcing us even closer. "Get in a circle," she yelled, as though it were a threat, and we did so. Everyone was very confused. I could hear whispers of, "What's going on?" and "Why are we here?" I was wondering the same thing. I heard the managers whispering behind me. I was quite worried at this point. We were in the room, just talking by now, when, out of nowhere, flaming sticks of toxic neon rained from the sky. Their impact caused a power shortage, and the room became pitch black. The only light I could see came from those strange sticks. Suddenly, a large array of squeals, yells, buzzes, pops, and screams blasted into the room. It was as if we were in the middle of a menagerie. The cacophonic melody stung my ears and gave me an intense headache. The sounds must have had a greater and more sinister effect on my fellow college students because the people around me suddenly began to run towards the center of the room, screaming and screeching like hypnotized banshees as they passed. I could feel myself being shoved in every direction as they ran past me. Some started rubbing the sticks all over themselves while others raised them above their heads or even threw them. They also began to display violent convulsions as they were repeating the various animal-like sounds that were echoing throughout the room. Was it possession? Or seizure? I don't know. Many were also chanting strange, almost demonic verbiage. I picked it up as "Ruave Parotai," or something of the like. I was also the only one who seemed to be immune to the sounds and sticks. But the ones who weren't then began to assault me. They grabbed my arms and torso and began to swing them around, staring at me with blank eyes and screaming, "Ruave Parotai! Ruave Parotai!" I eventually forced my way out of the demonic pit and snuck around the managers who were watching the sinful orgy of perverse enchantment and laughing at the display. They were pleased with what they had done to my peers. I found the door, unlocked it, and slowly opened it to make my swift escape from the horror that was still assaulting my ears and brain. The world outside was void of light, void of escape, and void of sanity. All of the cabins, the trees, the lake, and even my body was enveloped by black. Luckily, I still had my wits about me and pulled out my flashlight, but it was unable to penetrate the darkness. I knew they were coming for me. I had to run and never look back. But that's when I hit something. It was a tree. The satanic curse that was dispelled into the room must have been wearing off. It seemed as if it couldn't survive outside of the hut. I could now feel my body and the earth beneath me, and the moonlight return soon after. I eventually found shelter in my currently empty cabin, where I quickly penned down my accounts and went to bed. I woke the next day to find everyone by the buses ready to leave. Everyone seemed completely cured of the curse. They acted as they had in the past 3 days. No one even mentioned the incident. The 4-hour ride back to campus was kept busy by my constant paranoia. Sometimes I lay awake at night, pondering if what I saw had actually happened. But it must have. I remember it so vividly. Why did everyone seem so oblivious then? Everyone I've told back home thinks I'm making it up, trying to be funny, or something stupid. I guess I'll never truly know what happened that night. All I know is that it started with those sticks of flaming neon light. And the park managers had something to do with it. I was around maybe 16 or 15, and my mom and I were visiting this friend, whose name I can't remember, but for this story I'll call him Bill. Bill lived out in this real, old log cabin at the very edge of these woods. It was around 11 o'clock at night, and I was dead tired, and my mom was driving through the woods. She had an extra gas tank in the back part of the car because it was a really long trip. I eventually fell asleep and woke up to this loud crash when my mom was putting gas in the car. It freaked me out, and my mom told me to stay in the car because it sounded like a loud gunshot crossed with a lion roar that came from a real pissed off person. She started filling up the car and grabbed the flashlight, thinking it was someone stalking us. She came back 5 minutes later, and she was clearly freaked out, but even to this day, she won't tell me, but I knew what it was. The paranormal is quite normal in our family. We're used to weird stuff, but those woods, imagine lost woods from Ocarina of Time crossed with a suicide forest, with a dirt road. At that point, I'm too tired to even ask what had freaked her out, so I just went back to sleep. I woke up at around 4 in the morning, and we had made it to the cabin. Bill was a guy who we could only describe as man-bear, standing at around 6'4" and built like a wall. But he was the most friendly guy you could ever meet. A gazebo was out in the front yard, made out of pure walnut that he had crafted. And beyond that were more woods and beautiful sights where the lake just reflects off of everything. We chatted it up and had a very fun time. He made us this stew that was to die for. It was like a tuna casserole stew, but beefy. It was damn great stuff. We were all relaxing by the gazebo at around 11 at night. Normally, I'd have gone to bed at this point, but this was summer vacation, so I was allowed to stay up. Then, I started seeing these things, which I can only really describe as red, brooding eyes. And they were in the woods, but it was still too far to be certain. Bill ran inside to get his gun, and we followed him into the woods. The eyes disappeared, and it got freezing cold, like walking into a freezer cold. The flashlight went out, and I got sandwiched between Mom and Bill. And what happened afterwards still scares me. We all hear, "Where are my babies?" in this loud, shrieking scream, and I see this long, black-haired woman who had no eyes and was in a torn, white, blood-stained robe, just running like a linebacker right at us. At this point, I literally wet myself screaming. Bill fires his shotgun. I'm bawling my eyes out, and my mom is hugging me like a small child. We all began to head back, and the closer we got to the cabin, the warmer it became. We were all hysterical, and Bill locked the doors tightly and was shaking so hard that he could barely hold his gun. We didn't sleep for the rest of the night after that.